Yeah, if you can't, just sort of put your hand up and I'll try and talk a bit louder, because I'd rather not use the microphone if I can get away with it. So thank you all for having me here tonight. As already introduced, my name is Gemma Taylor. I'm the Borough Commander for Surrey Heath, working at the Council offices in Camberley. So for those of you that don't know, I just wanted to start with a little introduction to the team. So the structure of the teams are quite complicated, so I try to keep it as simple as possible. But essentially, the team that I'm mainly responsible for is called the Safer Neighbourhood team. So on the left-hand side there, you can see the officers that making up that team. Obviously, myself as the inspector. There's 2 sergeants, 1 anti-social behaviour officer, a manager for the office who supports us, and 6 police constables, 2 youth engagement officers, currently 4 police community support officers, and 1 licensing officer. That doesn't sound like many, but on the rest of the slide there, you can see all of the other people and teams who support us. So your response team, the teams that come out when you pick up the phone and dial 999, and also deal with the slow time investigations initially, they all work out of the council offices at Camberley. So for a period of time, they moved to Woking. That hasn't been the case for some years now. They all work out of Camberley council offices to cover Surrey Heath. We've got support from investigation departments such as CID, our domestic abuse team, child abuse team, public protection units. There's many investigation teams, too many to go through. So we have their support as well. We've got problem-solving advisors and data analysts that work alongside us, as well as a team of special constables and volunteers. And I think you'll have been had the presence of maybe Sarah and Chris previously at these meetings, and they're 2 of our prominent volunteers in Surrey Heath. So recently joined the team. We've had a new police constable, Joe Howden, and he's now dedicated again to the 6 villages. So for a period of time, particularly whilst I was off on maternity leave, you didn't have a dedicated officer for that area. You now have Joe. Hopefully in May we're due to get another new PCSO, and he will also be dedicated to that 6 villages area. And we've got PC Paul Finnegan, who again some of you will know from the villages, and back with us from his secondment. He is due to go on to a new team shortly. We're just waiting for the timescale on that, but we have got a replacement. A great PC from the response team called Vicky Robinson. So when Paul does leave, she will join us. And we've also got another PCSO, Dylan, who we're training up at the moment to take over the sort of town and the Old Dean area. So that's our current sort of state of play with staffing, but lots of things in the pipeline, and like I say, lots of support for us from other teams as well. So I just wanted to run through some of the current stats with you. So this is a map of the burglaries in the last 28 days. It actually goes from the 2nd of February to the 29th of February. So we had 16 burglaries in that period. It's actually the 3rd lowest number of burglaries of all the boroughs in Surrey, and it was 11 less than the previous 28 days, so essentially the whole of January. You will notice, if you're keen, that there's a few more dots on there than 16. That's because the place that I take the map and the data from is 2 different places. And what the map is showing is where offences are reported in March but happened at the end of February, and the data hasn't quite caught up with that yet. So there's a couple of extra on there, just for complete transparency. The main modus operandi, or what we call the MO, so the method of offending that we're seeing, and we have been seeing for a few months now, is entry via the rear door or rear window, window at the back of the property. The main things being targeted are jewellery, cash, and more recently high-value alcohol. So I'm not an expert, but if you like posh whiskies and things like that, and you've got some of that in your house, then that has been part of the target. We are still seeing this MO, like the figures suggest, not as much as we were in the darker months. Obviously we tend to see acquisitive crime come out of that sort of this crime type normally this time of year when the clocks are changing and the evenings are getting lighter. It's a pattern that is happening across Surrey and also across the region, so Surrey Heath is no exception. And the only other thing I'd say about this map is sadly, where the dots are, that's not in date order, because if it was, it would make it quite easy to predict. where to target our resources, but sadly that's not how it works. And they're all spread out. But you can see that obviously it's around that strategic road network, which is not uncommon to this area that we see there. Some of the things that we have been doing, and I don't know if you're aware, but back in November and December we ran 2 burglary campaigns, and we were joined by colleagues from Neighbourhood Watch, from the council and local councillors, and we were out delivering patio door alarms, which can be used on windows and doors, and there's some over on the table over at the side there, to areas where properties had been targeted. And we were trying to really up people's knowledge and information about what's been going on in their area. There's also information in this leaflet, which I'll talk to you a bit more about as we go on. At the moment, we've got a lot of ongoing investigations in relation to burglary. We do attend every single burglary that happens. It may not be immediate, because if the offenders have left the scene, then we may not get an immediate response. But we do attend every single one, and every single burglary is reviewed for SOCO attendance, so for any potential forensic evidence. We may not always attend, depending on what the information is, but it's always reviewed for that attendance so that we get any opportunities that we can. One thing we have seen more recently, and this is in relation to vehicle crime as well, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, is signal jammers being used on Wi-Fi CCTV devices. So you may think your home is being protected by some fantastic CCTV ring doorbell type systems, but unfortunately they can be intercepted. And I think it's a similar technology to what's used in some of the keyless car thefts that we have seen. So just be aware, if you think that your property is 100% protected with your Wi-Fi enabled CCTV, it can be intercepted, so you might want to just look at other measures to take as well. Vehicle crime, which I mentioned briefly just a minute ago. So this is the stats in relation to all vehicle crime. So that literally covers theft of number plates, theft of tools from vehicles, theft of other items from vehicles, attempting to get into a vehicle, what we call vehicle interference. So in that February period, the same period from the 2nd of February to the 29th of February, we had 28 offences. That was 9 less than January, and the theme remains around tool thefts from vans. And we've got 2 locations, you can see them on the map of the 3. That's the Premier Inn at Bagshot, again, ideally placed around that road network there, and the Sodexo premises that was targeted just towards the bottom of the map there as well. So we've got some ongoing work at the moment, particularly with that Premier Inn, to try and get them to work with us. One of the problems we face there in particular is that it's generally people coming in from out of the area, staying the night because they're doing work locally, their tools are being sold in their van, and then they're leaving. So it's hard to get the message to those people directly that they need to protect their property as best they can. So we're sort of reliant on the hotel and the owners of the car park, because it's not that straightforward, to try and help us communicate those messages. But they're the 2 main areas where we're seeing those. It has happened, some local people have been victims of this, so there's been a lot of work on social media to try and raise the profile of this crime type, to let people know it's happening, again to try and protect their tools as best as possible. It's not unique to Surrey Heath again, it's happening all over Surrey and it's happening all over the region. There was a bulk number of tools recovered in Surrey not so long ago, a massive amount that linked to a big organised crime group who are operating in the South East region. So the investigations are ongoing to try and obviously track these people down. Again, I've just mentioned this leaflet while we're on these 2 topics because I actually think this is brilliant. In a condensed version, covers lots of really good crime prevention advice. So if you have time tonight to pick one of these up, or if you run out, I'm sure we can get some more out to you. But it's got some really good tips in here about burglary, car crime, which we've discussed, and then cyber crime and other things which Dan's going to be talking about later on tonight. So if you have time to grab one of these, then please do. The only thing I wanted to mention on this, again, is that we have quite a spate of key keyless car thefts. So again, there's technology that allows the signal basically between the car key and the key to be interrupted, and then for the offenders to take the car without ever having to get inside the property to take the key. You can protect yourself from this with things such as what we call Faraday bags or signal jammer bags, which again are over to the side. If you've got a sort of nice enough car, which I don't, to have a keyless entry. So there are things that you can do to protect yourself against that, but we are starting to see that come back in, so just for you to be aware of that again as well. So some more general stats that I've got here, and obviously we have lots and lots of statistics, so I've just pulled out what I think are some of the sort of key ones for you. So on the right hand side here you've got the current forced solved rate, so that is the percentage of crimes that we are currently solving. Year to date, so bear in mind we're coming right to the end of that year now, is 11.5%. Over the last 3 months that's risen to 13.7%. So then Surrey Heath specifically, year to date we've had 72 less crimes than the same period last year and solved 62 more crimes in that period. The last 28 days we've seen 47 more, but we've solved 24 more, and the last 3 months 96 less, so I'm not quite sure what happened in the last 28 days, there's nothing jumping out at me, and solved 28 more. Charge rates in general are up. Our current solved rate in Surrey Heath is sat at 12.6% year to date, so obviously just above the force solved rate. Again, we're the highest on the Western Division, so that includes Surrey Heath, Woking, Guildford and Waverley, and we're the third highest in the force at 12.6%, and that's a 1.5 increase on the previous year. Just breaking that down a little bit for you across the bottom. So hate crime, the current solve rate 13.5%. In the last 3 months, that's risen to 20%. Total notifiable offences is at 12.6%, and again, in the last 3 months, that's risen. Burglary was at 3.1%. In the last 3 months, that's risen to 5%. Domestic abuse was at 13.2%, and we've seen a decline in the last 3 months. When I had a little look at the figures, I could see that last month, so the 28 days figures, we had a rise of 59% in our DA. Again, I'm not sure why that is. I need to investigate into that a bit further. And it could just be that sometimes domestic abuse cases can take some time to come to resolution. So there might be a little bit of a lag in the data there. But it's something I'm going to take away to have a look at because we have dropped off slightly based on the rest of the figures. Everything else is generally going up, which is a good thing. So a little bit more then in relation to what the safer neighbourhood teams specifically do. So our focus is on long-term problem solving, the issues in the community that are having big impacts on people, things like antisocial behaviour, neighbour disputes. It could be someone that's repeatedly stealing from the same shop or groups of shops over and over again. And so we specifically look at what antisocial behaviour legislation we can use to stop that and prevent it from happening. So in this period, from the 1st of November to the 1st of March, we've issued 13 community protection warnings, 1 community protection notice, 3 partial property closure orders and 2 extensions. So that's where a particular address is causing harm to community. We can partially close it, so only the occupant is allowed to access that property, and if anyone else does, we can arrest them. We've obtained 1 full property closure order, which is where we completely close the property down and no one can access it. We've arrested 1 person for breach of partial closure order, issued 1 criminal behaviour order, had 2 arrests for breaches of criminal behaviour order, and we've obtained 4 premises warrants and we've actioned 2 so far. 1 won't be actioned because the person's moved address now. But that just gives you a little insight into the work my team, the Safe Neighbourhood team specifically do, as well as many, many other things. So at the moment, our biggest priority area is currently in Bagshot, so it's centred around Bagshot Green, and that's in relation to drug use and the associated vulnerability of the people involved in that. We've currently got one person remanded, having been stopped with a large amount of Class A drugs in Bagshot. And we believe that's disrupted a lot of the behaviour, but obviously now we're working on dealing with those people that are vulnerable, who are users of those drugs, because the problem doesn't just go away from them when we arrest the person supplying the drugs. And we've got some ongoing problem solving around Moorlands Road, Avenue Susie, Brunswick Road and Woodland Glade. And then wider problem solving that we're working on is in relation to violence against women and girls, tool thefts, which I've mentioned, Annabelles, which is the use of Lakeside to house refugees. And we've got one county line that we believe may be operating in the area, so we're doing some work around that at the moment. When I came back from maternity leave, sorry, I've got no idea how much time you gave me, so if I'm talking too much, just, as we've lost the speaker, we might be okay.
Okay.
When I came back from maternity leave, one thing I wanted to do, which I think we lost a little bit of when we were sort of trying to focus on our response times and things like that, which are important, but is our prevention work. So I split the year down into sort of 4 quarters, albeit not equal, according to areas of focus for us. And those areas were defined by what the Chief wants us to achieve in his plan, the topical issues and things that we really need to be letting people know about and letting them know how they can prevent becoming victims of these types of crime, and then tying that in with the calendar year and our seasons. So the team had a little bit of a plan for the year. November to January isn't on there because we've done that. That was obviously burglary and vehicle crime. That will happen again next year because we see that in the darker winter months. But these are our focuses for the team when it comes to prevention. So I've set some clear tasks for them, and I've asked them to get out into their communities and find out the areas where they're going to find the people that are most likely to be potentially users or victims in relation to drugs, in relation to fraud, cybercrime. And it ties in very nicely. It's not convenient that Dan's here tonight to talk to you on those topics. May to June, we're hoping to do more focus around road safety. And then July and October, antisocial behaviour in those summer months when all the children are off school, business crime, which we've also had a focus on this week, and again drugs to tie in with our county lines intensification. So just to give you an insight into some of what we did November to January, we held engagement stands, we had the ad van around knife crime and an amnesty bin based at the council offices. On the 20th of November, we ran a knife test purchasing operation where 3 out of 8 retailers failed. We ran Operation Hot Foot on the 16th and 17th of December, which was focused around shoplifting in the town centre. So that was a plainclothes operation. Over 100 vehicles were stopped on one night under the Drink Drive campaign in December. We ran 2 successful burglary prevention campaigns, which I've spoken to you about already. And on the 22nd of December, we ran a taxi licensing operation to make sure that all of our taxis were safe for people to use over that Christmas period. And that was in conjunction with dealing with the unauthorised encampments that was at Norfolk Avenue in Deepcat and more recently at the Collingwood school site in Camberley. And February to April, so far in this period, we've had County Lines Intensification Week. So during that period, we ran a joint operation with British Transport Police at Camberley and Bagshot rail stations. We managed to arrest 2 people on that day, one of which was in possession of loads of meat that he'd just stolen from a nearby shop and was also wanted. We've been looking for him for a long time. So it wasn't related to drugs, but it was great. We needed to get him in custody, and we did. And the second person that we arrested that day was in possession of drugs. British Transport Police are dealing with that. We were only out for 2 hours, and we had 2 arrests. And lots of other stop searches with the drug stop, so that was a good event. We also, I mentioned, we obtained premises warrants, and we conducted one of those in Deepcat back in February, and we seized £10,000 worth of drugs, cocaine, cannabis and ketamine. 2 were arrested, 1 remaining on remand. So we've got some ongoing problem solving work that we're doing in relation to that block of flats. And then on Sunday, just gone, a slightly different tact, to try and deal with antisocial behaviour and shoplifting by groups of young people in the town. With the council, we set up a pop-up youth club to try and divert those young people away from crime, get to know them, talk to them, build rapport, find out what it is that's making them come to the town, commit offences and make it not a very nice place to go on a Sunday afternoon. So we've got some ongoing work that we're doing longer term there as well. I feel like I've talked non-stop, possibly too quickly for quite a while now, so I will now do my best if anyone has questions, if you're happy with questions to try and answer them. Bearing in mind, I'm currently on leave, so I've just come in today especially for this, so if it's something that's happened in the last 10 days, I might not know the answer.
Okay, could you let me know how many of the, go back to your crime statistics. You've got a, you say solve rate of about 13% for various other bits and pieces. How many, do you know what the percentage of not proceeded with, no further actions there are related to those statistics?
Yeah, so essentially we have just over 20 different categories that we file crime under. And so that might include because the victim isn't supporting, because there's insufficient evidence, because the CPS have said, no, there's not enough evidence. There's, like I say, about, I think it's 21, maybe even more now, different categories which we have to go through. Some are solved outcomes, so that includes all of your charges, community resolutions, youth restorative intervention, and the checkpoint scheme, where we divert offenders away from the criminal justice system and work with them in relation to, for example, drug use or alcohol use. So there's lots and lots of different categories. We have breakdowns and statistics on all of that stuff, and at the minute there's a lot of work going on at the force level to look at why there's a higher use of the category, for example, victim is not supported. Why is that? What can we do about that to get our victims on board? Or if we get them on board, how do we keep them on board? Because that process of going to court is obviously long and drawn out. So all of those kind of statistics get looked at constantly, and there's that work at the force level going on around those different outcomes, essentially, for crimes. So I don't have those stats right here and now because it's massive. And it would probably, without being any disrespect, blow everybody's mind because it's all police jargon. But we do know, and we do keep track of it, and at a higher level we keep track of it. And if there's anything that looks like an anomaly, it comes back down and we get asked why, we look into it further. That kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I'd like to know if the statistics are available, but obviously, if it's not available, then it's not. But,
it's not, that specific breakdown isn't available. I think the solved rate is available. Nationally, I believe they're available. I don't know the website, I can try and find out.
That includes community resolution?
Yes,
okay.
Pretty sure it does. I'm going to have to check now because I'm doubting myself. But one of the big pushes that we've had, specifically under the new Chief Constable, is charges. So that he had to do a lot of work with the court system, because obviously it's all very well us pumping a load more charges into the system, but then that would easily and very quickly overwhelm them. So we are seeing a lot more charges. I mean, just this month, we've had a force-wide operation called Operation Marshall, where we had about 900 crimes where they had suspects attached, but we hadn't processed them yet, so we hadn't arrested them or interviewed them yet. They were waiting to be dealt with. Just since the 2nd of March, 240 people have been dealt with in relation to that operation. And obviously the chap that I mentioned who was caught with all the meat at the train station, he was outstanding for about 5 other things. So very quickly that 900 crimes, obviously they don't relate to 900 suspects. He straight away swallowed up, for example, 5, and then we had the additional one of the new offence of the meat. But we've had a specific focus on really sweeping up anyone that's been outstanding that we know of. And that's helping to boost this charge rate. The massive drive at the minute is charges.
Are the CPS being more helpful at the moment than they have been?
I mean, the CPS, they can only work within the guidelines that they've got. There's always constant conversations nationally and locally around specific things, and we do have an appeals process. So if we feel like they haven't given us, you know, the time of day or something, then we have an appeal process that we can follow. But, you know, ultimately, we might feel really passionately about something and someone being charged, but they have to look at it in the cold light of day. Is there enough evidence?
Thank you, Captain.
Yep. Oh, either one. You'll run behind each other.
Hi, Gemma.
Hiya.
Thanks for the update. Since you've been back, we've got quite a few actions, but there's still a long way to go. I'm part of the feedback development part of the Master Society. The biggest challenge and barrier on place is joining up with the boroughs. And as you start to mention, those that can be villages, by the way, that's part of the plan going forward. How do you see us now improving the relationship between the neighbourhood watch and the police? Because I've met most of the evidence that have got them on, but again, it's that capacity, funding, and all of that. So the biggest strive we've got is trying to join the resident groups up. So we're part of the Camden Watch at the top of our roads, but we're trying to join up with neighbourhood watch who can that the motorway divides us. How do you see us correcting those barriers between boundaries, county, and cross-party lines?
I think there's sort of a few different questions in there, so I'll try to answer as best I can. So I think firstly, the police's relationship with Neighbourhood Watch, certainly locally, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say it's fairly good. You know, I have regular meetings with the chair. I go to as many of these meetings, I know I didn't make the last one, but as many of the meetings as I can. The coordinators meeting I was at a few weeks ago, and I share similar information. We recently have started a new process where if there's a burglary anywhere in Surrey Heath, I send the information through to Alan and he disseminates that to the coordinator, and the coordinator goes out and visits that person. So not only do they get a visit from the police, they will also get a visit from the Neighbourhood Watch coordinator, and we can share that information under our sort of information sharing protocol. And I think that's fantastic. And actually, other boroughs have come to me and asked, how have you got this situation with your Neighbourhood Watch where they're willing to go and offer crime prevention advice for you? So I think we share stuff like that all the time as borough commanders across the boroughs, and we have all sorts of meetings that I won't bore you with under lots of different topics where we discuss, okay, well, what are you doing about that problem in your area, and how are you working with your partner agencies? One thing under the prevention focuses that I mentioned is that I've asked the team, when they're holding well, firstly, I've asked them to start holding Meet the Beats again, because that, I think, sort of went off kilter a little bit. So you will see, if you follow on social media, that we are holding more Meet the Beats than maybe we have done for a little while. Not as many as I'd like yet, but we're working towards that. But I've asked for those figures in the community to be invited, so I want the councillors to know about it and to come along if they can. I want the local coordinators to know about it and come along if they can. So again, it's about just constantly encouraging that partnership working. When it comes to vulnerable people in the community, it is difficult because we're not always the sole agency that should be dealing with that person or group of people, and quite often we are the agency trying to push other agencies to work with those individuals or groups, and that obviously isn't our core function. Our core function is crime, really, and antisocial behaviour. But we do it through mechanisms of, we have a meeting called the CHARM, which is a community harm and risk management meeting. It's actually chaired by the Community Safety Partnership and the council. And that's where all of the mental health services, children's services, adult social care, sometimes the NHS, schools, depending on who it is, please, we all come together and try to problem solve around that individual, so we have one approach. Everyone's got the information and everyone knows what's going on and can help with their own specific areas. If that crosses boundaries of boroughs or forces, you know, we have links with Thames Valley and Hampshire, we have links with Runnymede, so all of those mechanisms are in place. It isn't perfect, you know, I won't try and hide that fact. It is difficult when you're trying to work with lots of different partners, but we do have things in place and we try our absolute best to try and get that system to work as it can. But I think there's only so much as the police that we can do, because we are reliant on those other agencies' support as well.
You've answered the question, and it's work in progress.
Yeah.
There is some pretty good summary. If we don't focus on the good work, it's only the negative things. So some of the places where we've highlighted the steps is where you need to look at the task to finish and how it's treated themselves. So thanks for that honest answer. Very difficult coming back and to hand it over or to the father. So let's work together. We're not to be sharing together.
But all I would say is we try to advertise as much as we can on our Facebook page. We're really limited on what we're allowed to do, so annoyingly, we're not allowed to respond to comments. So we put a post up and someone asks a question, we've got no way of answering it, and obviously it's not appropriate for us to answer through our own personal Facebook accounts. Out of professional curiosity, I even follow the Surrey Leaf Beat because I like to see what my staff put on it, and I like to see what you guys are saying or what the community is saying on it to get that feel. So if you are a Facebook user, then I definitely advise following the Surrey Leaf Beat page, because it is one place where I do try to get the team to publicise as much as possible what we do. But also, I'll be honest, they're so busy that putting it on Facebook is the low down in their priority list. So yes, I agree. I really want us to be better at publicising what we're doing and what we're doing well at, and also getting feedback on what we're not doing so well at. But we're not there yet. This really is a 5-year plan for me, so it is a work in progress.
So let's review it in a year.
You can hold me to account then. Sorry, I'm just conscious there was a chap behind you who had a question.
You mentioned a couple of times the crime prevention leaflets and how pleased you are with it.
This one?
Yeah, I wonder therefore whether in slightly slower time it could be scanned and maybe emailed out to coordinators so we could then pass it on to our watch members. That way we might be building on the burglary awareness campaign that we ran at the end of the last year.
Yeah. So again, some of this I did a video in Bagshot recently, again on the Facebook page, and I mentioned some of the stuff that is reprinted here, so I know many of you may not use Facebook, but if you do, definitely give it a follow.
We done it as well. We're trying to resource NFC tags in Sussex Police. Basically what that is, it's like a little device you can put on a table, you can tap a smartphone on it, and it'll bring up a portal. You can see all kinds of digital leaflets. So that will save a lot of our leaflet time in PTSOs. We get someone to tap something on their phone, and then access hundreds of leaflets at once. And that will also be shared with you guys, maybe watch coordinators as well.
Lost track of who.
Two things, maps and barbershops. So you send out, on the watch updates, we get incidents with location. It'd be quite nice if that was on a map.
Okay.
You see clusters. And the other question is, are you happy with the legitimacy of so many barbershops in the high streets?
How do you mean?
Well, I think each town, village can support one barbershop, and there's in our high street we've got 4. I'm not
Which high street?
In Frimley, and I don't believe that there's enough business to support those barbershops. I don't think that they're doing the business that's probably going through there. I think it's worth investigating. The question is are you aware, or are you happy, or there's nothing to see there?
Yes, I know one closed in Frimley recently, barbershop, but what I would say is The Operation Aiden, which is on here, is, because I think this is what you're alluding to if we call a spade a spade, is an operation where there's a different focus through the year, and it's run by the NCA, and it's largely based around immigration offences, human trafficking offences, and things like that. So quite often that requires us to visit places like nail bars, barber shops, car washes. So we regularly do visit those kind of places to make sure that there aren't any human trafficking type offences going on, and that essentially the people running those establishments are legitimate. Sometimes we find that they're not, sometimes we find that they are. And that's kind of all I can say on it. But we are aware of it. There's ongoing things around human trafficking all the time. If we ever get any intelligence or information that a specific location is being used for something like that, then we act on it. But we don't regularly visit all of these premises because we would have to regularly visit all barber shops in the borough.
I can have my nails done at 4 nail bars in England.
That could be an issue for the council, to be fair.
Nail bars are quite busy, but the barber shops,
I can't speak about how busy the barber
that's
shops are.
right.
But if there's any, like I say, if there is any information or intelligence in relation to those kinds of offences happening, then we do look into it. In fact, we have a team of people as well who we refer to get advice. The same with prostitution and things like that. Yes, but generally it's all linked, it's organised crime, so you don't tend to get money laundering without human trafficking offences. So that's normally how the information comes to us. It doesn't normally come to us as sort of intelligence about money laundering. But if it is, we would look at it in the same way, because it's all normally organised crime groups. It's all linked in.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you very much. So now we'll go to Dan.
Right, so good evening everyone, it's a pleasure to be here. I was recently named Surrey Neighbourhood Watch Officer of the Year, and I'm slightly nervous to keep up that reputation unless my offer will be extended. Anyway, we're going to be talking about online safety today and cybercrime. So I am the Cyber Protection Officer for Surrey and Sussex Police, which means I service both. Sorry, I've got the cameras. I operate in both Surrey and Sussex, and today we're going to be talking about kind of the main themes of cybercrime. So who are the threat actors? What strategies do they use? How do they target people? Who do they target? But most importantly, we're going to be learning some cybersecurity tips and how you guys can stay safe online. This is going to be slow-paced, and I'm not going to be needlessly technical. I know technical and IT people have a propensity of being needlessly complicated with the language that they use, but I always say to people that you do not need to be technical to stay safe online. It's a big misconception, and my grandfather is one of the most cyber-resilient people I personally know. He's not technical with computers, but he can spot a scam, which I think is a really, really encouraging message, which is why I work so closely with neighbourhood watch organisations to get that message out there. So this PowerPoint is going to cover everything you need to know and none of the fluff. So there's a 30-second survey, which I will pass around at the end, but it really helps us with our metrics. Humble brag is that we're the best in the country with this, so we've spoken to more people, got more behaviour change, more of these surveys done than the Met has, so we're really proud of our figures in our counties. So some kind of broad statistics to start us off with, and I apologise I speak quickly, but we'll cover some other options later on. Over half of all reported crime is fraud related, which is a staggering statistic. And the UK economy loses 27 billion a year due to cybercrime. A large chunk of that comes from IP theft, but again, it's a staggeringly abundant crime type. It's something that costs us a huge amount of money. And as cybercrime, it's not only we are there to save our victims and stop members of our community becoming a victim, we're also there to put a dent in that figure. Because of course, if you're a small business and you get hit by a cyber attack, that's the difference between life and death for these companies. If you're not prepared for it, you go bankrupt. And of course, as a police service, we have a vested interest in making sure that our small businesses, our local communities are safe from this quite pernicious crime type. So last year, over 21,000 social media accounts were taken over. Again, that's a staggering statistics. That's your Facebook account, your Instagram, whatever you may be using. And 39% of small businesses experienced a cyber attack last year. Again, it's a matter of when rather than if. So a large chunk of my role is just raising the awareness of that to our communities. So we have a team of detectives who will pursue offenders where there's meaningful lines of inquiry. We have a team of very, very passionate detectives who are very highly skilled in what they do. But the other side of that is cyber protect. So I'm essentially proactive on the cybercrime unit. I have a team of volunteers as well that support us. But I will go out proactively to community groups. The way I see it is I want to reach people before they become a victim. So I go to high streets with our engagement van. I do public engagement events. I do media appearances. I go on the radio. I go to business conventions. I met the Home Secretary on Thursday. That was quite fun. I do lots of pieces like that just to try and get the message out there. So one of the proudest features of our unit is that every single reporting victim will receive bespoke cybersecurity advice from myself. So even if there is no line of inquiry and there's no investigation that a detective can follow, that victim will still receive a phone call from myself. I'm really proud of that base level of service because we're not just doing some of the reference number, we're providing some of the bespoke service every single time. So cybercrime is reported to Action Fraud, you may have heard of, it's the UK's fraud reporting site. There's been a lot of money being thrown into Action Fraud at the moment, so we're quite optimistic about what that's going to look like in the future. But in addition to that, you can forward on malicious emails to the address that you see there. I will send you guys a slide deck of all these links and things after this presentation. But cybercrime is incredibly pernicious, and probably the largest attack that we had in the UK at a national level was the NHS WannaCry. You may remember this a few years ago. What this was a strain of ransomware. Basically what that means is a criminal got into a computer network and they encrypt files. What that means, they basically do a digital padlock, they lock up all the files in the system, they demand a payment to get that data back. They hit the NHS a few years ago, it infected over 20,000 computers, so nurses, GPs, doctors, they couldn't access their patient records, whatever it may be. And as a result, 19,000 appointments were cancelled. So when we think about cybercrime and cybersecurity, we think about it in that financial sense. But in this modern world, we depend on technology now, right? So we depend on life support systems, power grids, all these kind of things. They facilitate life itself, and when those systems are in jeopardy, it's massively damaging. Cyber warfare as well is a massive geopolitical issue at the moment. In my view, it's just as impactful as the invention of flights. Cyber warfare is a massive component of modern battlefields. It will increasingly be that way in the future as well. So who are the criminals that do it? Who are the threat actors? Culturally, we perceive cyber criminals as like some person in a hoodie perched over a laptop. By quantity, it looks more like the image on the right there. So we call them OCGs, as Matt mentioned, so organised crime groups. So usually these are based in developing countries, so countries where there's a propensity for English to be spoken to as a second language, where wages are low, but they've got access to internet cafes. So by and large, the two countries that feature most prominently are India and Nigeria. Generally, it could be any kind of country like this, but essentially they are designed to be like businesses that operate fraud on a mass scale. So they'll sometimes have dozens, hundreds of employees, they'll have secretaries, they'll have office managers, they'll have their figures at the top as well. A huge amount of sophistication. They're the same people usually that call you up, pretending to be the HMRC, saying that you don't pay us £200, you're going to jail. They're the same kind of organisations that do it. They're all designed to commit fraud on a mass scale. But also some of the groups that do the romance fraud scams, which you may be aware of. So they are so sophisticated, in fact, with romance fraud, that I've seen cases where they've got about 10 people on the line who they think might pay up in a ransom fraud scam, and they will literally hire a local supermodel or someone like that to come in for just 10 minutes to speak to one of these victims on the phone or on video chat. So that victim feels like they actually are talking to their love interest, but in reality, the OCD just paid that person briefly because they think they can get some money out of that victim. So again, a huge amount of sophistication. So domestically, we have people that commit what we call computer misuse offences in the UK. So this is a bit more rarer, but we do have domestic suspects, and obviously, logistically, it's much easier for a detective to pursue lines of inquiry with a local suspect. We do arrest people all the time. Interestingly, a lot of our domestic hackers are actually very young. They may be teenagers. And Matt alluded to the prevent function of policing. We have a similar thing in cyber. So the police force isn't always there to criminalise people. We don't always want to arrest everyone. With teenagers, for example, you might have someone who's got an aptitude for computers. They might like modifying files. They might like messing around their school's network. We're not there to put these people in the criminal justice system. We have a dedicated team of officers who will provide a bespoke presentation to that individual, and we'll say, look, you've got all these talents, you could use your skills for good here, you get a good job in the IT field, rather than use your skills for crime. Cybersecurity is incredibly lucrative, there's a lot of money in it, not for me because I work for the States, but it's a really good field to be in. Tim knows that joke, I made it all the time. Anyway, so essentially we are there as that gentle input, so I do a lot of work with schools to speak to them about their students, and if they've got anyone who they think maybe going down that route of committing some kind of cyber offence. So we're very much multi-agency. We have a quite holistic approach to all kinds of variants of cybercrime. Disgruntled employees, this is essentially where someone's a bit angry with their workplace. They know that the writing's on the wall, or they've been fired, and they'll delete a bunch of files on their company's server, or they'll download malware or some kind of virus intentionally. So again, it's one of these cybersecurity threats that people don't often realise, but actually we've seen loads of cases of it in Surrey and Sussex. Activists are people that commit offences for some kind of political or social reason. So obviously think geopolitical there, so a lot of Iranians, Russians, those kind of things. And state-sponsored hacking is a really interesting one. So this has exploded over the past couple of years. So when Russia invaded Ukraine, they basically set loose all their criminals that they had, cyber criminals that they had detained, and they basically set them loose on Western infrastructure. So a large majority of ransomware attacks actually come from Russian gangs. They will target UK schools, universities, hospitals, places like that to cause a disruption to the UK economy. Even though they're directly sponsored by the Russian state, their goals may be state aligned, so they all act in a way which aligns with the political ambitions of the state they're representing. Now, absolutely anyone can be the victim. It's not just lovely ladies like this, it could be absolutely anyone. Our average age is around age 50 or so, which I think is quite young. It's really not elderly people at all that fall victim to cybercrime. Some of the youngest people that you expect, who are switched on, who love technology, they all still fall victim to cybercrime because they don't know what to look out for. And again, I go back to what I said earlier, you don't need to be technical to stay safe online. It's a really encouraging message, and we'll talk a bit about how you can do that later on. So, lots of weird terms in cyber, some ones I've selected for you tonight. Trojan is basically something that looks too good to be true because it's too good to be true. So, if you're browsing the internet and you see a free movie, free video game, free file, free upgrade on your software package, be very skeptical of it. There's loads of these out there on the internet, and basically they will hide malware or something malicious in a download. So if you're downloading something that you think is safe, it could open a backdoor to your computer, it may have something nasty in it. Phishing is the most important term you need to know. So phishing accounts for 82% of all the threat vectors. What this means basically in human terms is how criminals get into a computer network. So when they target businesses, phishing is by and large the most common way that criminals get access to someone's network. And basically that is the art of manipulating humans. So essentially it's phishing, they give some kind of bait, it's that malicious email that you may receive, they're sending millions of these out every day, saying you've got a long distant relative that has died somewhere, you've got a big inheritance, please click on this link to claim the winnings. That is phishing. I'm sure you've all received emails like this all the time, but that is by and large the largest volume that we see. And spear phishing is a more targeted form of this. This is where the criminal will use information which is known about you to try and target you. So in a business context, they might emulate one of your suppliers. Neighborhood Watch, they might emulate, some kind of charity maybe, and they'll say, hi, Bob, I've got this important invoice coming up next week. I need you to click on it really quickly, otherwise something important's not going to be able to happen and you're going to be in trouble. Again, that's spear phishing. So usually they'll target people on a Friday afternoon, people are a little bit tired, they want to go home for the weekend. That's when people are at their most vulnerable for spear phishing. And malware is basically malicious software. So anything you do on a computer, it uses what's called software or firmware, and malware is basically a malicious form of that. So it's your viruses, your trojans, worms, all that kind of stuff that you may have heard in pop culture, that is malware. So the impact of victims can be absolutely devastating. The way I always phrase it is that if someone steals a physical possession of yourself, that's obviously it's awful, but you're not going to see that threat actor again. I always find that with cybercrime, it's incredibly pernicious because it leaves victims of this this enduring sense of dread. Because if someone gets into your email system, they've got access to your most sensitive data, they know everything about you, they know all your intimate documents, or your photos, your family information. We store so much of our lives online now, and when that information is in the hands of threat actors, it can be devastating. So some of the victims I dealt with, they've been very depressed, they'll be very anxious about going outside, they feel like the world's watching them, they won't feel confident using technology or computers. It's really devastating, and it breaks your heart, really. And so, which is why we, as a team, we work so tirelessly to get to our communities and spread awareness of the threat picture before people become a victim. So the ones that we care most about, and the ones that we love, and those who are more vulnerable in our society, don't have to deal with this in the first place. And also the financial impact, I mentioned this earlier, crippling. If you're a small business and you get hit by ransomware, you don't have a backup, you're done. Like, it's as simple as that. And there's so many organisations just do not appreciate the risk of this. It's really devastating, and we've seen so many businesses close down just because they've been hit and they've not had some kind of cyber resilience plan in place. Now, passwords, the first thing you can do to stay safe online is use the cat. But password, who knows what a bad password would be? Any ideas what a bad password would be? Hands up. Password? Yeah, hand over there, sir?
And password.
Yeah, absolutely. So why is bad?
Yes, read it.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. They're easy to guess, right? So if you have a password or password 123 or 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and those passwords account for about 1% of all passwords that people have. And again, it's very easy to guess these kind of things. So what we recommend is not use your dog's name, don't use your pet's name or anything personal about you. The reason being, it's easy to guess, right? I can know just a little bit of information about you, I can ask you casually, and I can say, do you have a dog? Oh yeah, what's the dog's name? Sam. I can ask you date of birth maybe, and that is a huge number of people's passwords, like my family included. I'm sure someone here has their dog's name as their password. But make sure that you change it when you get home. We always recommend the use of free random words supported by special characters. Now the reason that we say free random words is because criminals can have it's basically a software package where if you have a single word as a password, the criminal can crack that in literally 60 seconds. Because what their programs will do is they'll basically run through thousands of different combinations at once, and eventually it's going to crack your password if you have just a single word. So we always recommend the use of free random words supported by special characters. And it's really important that you have unique passwords for all your accounts as well. The way I see this is if all your eggs are in one basket and something goes wrong, you're in a bad situation. So many social media account takeovers that I see, it stems from people having really bad passwords. And I know you're thinking, Daniel, how am I going to manage all these passwords, right? What we recommend is the use of a password manager. So if you're comfortable using a device, a smartphone or something, you can get a digital one where you can store your passwords on your phone and you can copy and paste them into the password input box when you're trying to log into an account. Or you can be a bit more old school. My fiance uses this obnoxiously pink notebook where she stores her passwords. She writes them down, but she's quite clever because she'll store this somewhere safe in our property. But she has a cipher in her mind. She knows, in her mind, she doesn't write this down anywhere, but she's going to add a series of 3 digits to the end of all of her passwords. So that way, even if some criminal by any chance they get hold of that notebook, they're still not getting into her account. So, something to consider. Do whatever works for you, but ultimately our guidance, free random words as your password, supported by special characters and a unique password for your accounts. And also, make sure you're using some form of password or authentication check on all your devices. I shouldn't be able to pick up your phone and get into your account. You need to have some form of passcode. And also, enable two-factor authentication where possible. So what this is like another check that you are who you claim to be. So a lot of social media accounts have this now where it will send you a code. What I always recommend that you do is enable biometrics. So whether or not it's your Face ID, which actually it's very secure, but if you have an evil twin, someone can get into your account. Anyway, what I recommend most of all is your biometrics, as in your thumbprint. So it's a much more convenient way of logging in. It saves you more time. It's much more difficult for criminals to emulate your thumbprint. So safe and easy. Digital footprint is really important as well. So this is basically the things that are posted online about you or things that you posted yourself. make sure that you're always maintaining really restricted privacy settings. So on your social media account, I shouldn't be able to type in your name on Google, find your Facebook account, find everything that you like to do, who your family are, what your mobile number is, all these kind of bits and pieces. Now you'll be amazed at the number of people that have no privacy settings on their social media accounts. It can be really pernicious, because as we mentioned with spear phishing earlier, criminals will use information about you to guess your password, or they'll use information about you to spear phish you. So if you're posting about a certain hobby, the criminal might think, oh, okay, Bob likes this hobby, I'm going to send Bob an email about this hobby that he likes, and ask him to click on a link relating to that hobby. So these things can happen quite easily, so just make sure that on any platform that you're posting information on, you're maintaining strict privacy settings. So on Facebook it looks something like this. Make sure you're not accepting friend requests from people you don't know. And second of all, make sure that none of your posts can be seen by people that aren't your friend on Facebook. Really, really important. And also, I don't know if you guys have seen those awful quizzes on Facebook. What's your first childhood pet or something? Don't ever do these things, because you don't always know who's posting these quizzes. I've seen so many of them online. It'll be like, what kind of car are you? It'll be these kind of really silly quizzes. And essentially, a lot of the questions that they ask will be very similar to the bank security questions. So it'd be like, who's your favourite childhood teacher? And often that same question is what you get in a bank security check. So the bank will ask you the same thing. So sometimes criminals can actually post these quizzes themselves. I don't have it illustrated here, for example. But basically they'll get that information and try and log into your security questions. So just be quite mindful of the kind of information you're posting online. And smart devices, these need to be secure as well. So your Ring doorbells, your Alexas, all these kind of things. These are a cybersecurity risk now. The same password guidance applies, so they all have some kind of corresponding app usually. Make sure you're using free random word passwords, and keep them updated as well. So every single software update that you're doing on these devices is patching a vulnerability. So basically what that means, there'll be some kind of weakness in the software, and that update will fill that vulnerability and make sure that your device is a bit more secure. So keep them up to date. This is my favourite slide. So, first up, USB drives. So there's a critical component to cybersecurity people don't often consider. We actually had cases, actually in Surrey Heath, that was actually coming up, of criminals. They found a wealthy postcode and they physically mailed USB drives to, they basically found a bunch of wealthy people, a bunch of rich people living in a certain postcode. They physically sent USB drives to them with the hope that the victims would plug it into their laptop. So the message basically is, if you receive a USB drive or a CD in a brown envelope, don't be curious. Don't plug it into your device. That could have been left there intentionally. We see sometimes of criminals that go into a small business or whatever, they'll just leave a USB drive on the desk in the reception area. They'll see they're hoping, they're hoping that someone's going to be curious, take it into the back office and plug it in and infect the network. So be very mindful of the kind of things that you see. Backups are really important. So vital for businesses, right? If all your eggs are in one basket and something bad happens, you're in a really bad situation. So with small businesses, I'm not talking about that in too much detail today, but essentially small businesses need to have a backup, off-site and external, of all their data. Because if you get hit by a cyber attack and all your files are encrypted and you can't get access to them, you need to be able to clear that database and restore from that backup. It's really, really important, and so many businesses just don't realise this. And also if your personal life is so important as well. Make sure you've got a backup of all your data. So if something goes wrong, something happens to your device, or you get, sometimes someone's attacking you online, you've got a backup of all your files. And also it's good for your quality of life as well. If something happens to your device, your photos are gone or whatever, you've got a backup of all that data. I use an external hard drive at home where I store my data on. You can use the cloud, use whatever works for you. Public Wi-Fi isn't always secure. I did an article actually on the monthly fraud newsletter in the know that some of you guys may have seen recently about this. But basically, public Wi-Fi isn't always secure, so you don't always know how strong these networks are. But basically, sometimes criminals intercept the signals being sent from the device to the Wi-Fi router. And basically, that is a huge cybersecurity risk. So we've seen cases of financial managers, the people that are doing their payments at the end of the quarter, where basically they've been paying a supplier for their business, and they're using a public Wi-Fi network. Criminal intercepts it, and they can see the email exchange between the supplier and the business manager. And when it came time to make the payment, they swapped the details from the supplier's email and bank account to the criminal's bank account. and the victim will send it straight to the criminal. So be very mindful of what you're doing in public Wi-Fi. I always recommend against it where possible. Your cellular data is always going to be more secure than public Wi-Fi. But also the other risk of it is shoulder surfing. So it's something you don't always think about, but I know someone basically who was up in London and he was just like leaning over a table just accessing his phone. Someone peered over his shoulder, saw what his passcode was on the phone. Another gang member came up to him, grabbed his phone. His PIN number on the phone, obviously the criminal knew, logged into it, but he had the same PIN for his phone entries thing as his online banking PIN. So the criminal got into his online banking just from that simple thing and drained his account. So be mindful, whenever you're entering a passcode or a password, just look over your shoulder, is someone watching me? And it's also why I recommend biometrics as well. Log in with your thumbprint, because even if a criminal sees what you're typing on your phone, if you've got biometric, you just put your thumb on the phone. So they're not going to get any information from seeing that. Antivirus is really important as well. This is friendly software, so this is software which is beneficial to you. There's lots to choose from. There's AVG, Norton, McAfee. If you're using modern Windows operating system, Windows Defender does some antivirus components, which is really good. But essentially, this will stop malware being downloaded onto your device. It's not going to save you from everything, but it can catch a lot of the threats that you may miss out. It will just be your friendly guidance online there to stop you from doing anything that might be harmful. So device updates, we talked about that earlier, just keep your devices up to date. So I get updates on my phone every 5 minutes, it's really annoying. But these are security updates, they are really important that you do these kind of things. And actually the NHS OneCry attack you saw earlier, that happened because they weren't updating their devices quick enough, and a criminal found a vulnerability and got into the NHS that way. Now, data breaches are really important as well. So we store data in companies all the time. Sometimes these companies can have data breaches, whether it's from human error or some kind of cyber attack. Sometimes companies like MyFitnessPal or Adobe, the credentials of their customers can be leaked online. And obviously that is a cybersecurity risk, because if your password and your credentials are leaked online, criminals potentially buy that data and they can try and log into your accounts. So this website is completely safe for use, will have it been pwned. So basically you can put in your email address here, or your phone number, and you can see if you've been involved in a public domain data breach. So you can put your email address there. I wager a good number of you will have data breaches here. It's very common, but you can see where and when it happens. So what data you stored, what company you store data with, when that company had the data breach, and they'll give you advice on what to do as well. And of course the advice is going to be, if your data was leaked online, you change your password immediately. On this site, you can also sign up for alerts as well, which is really useful. Now, a lot of the business takeovers and the social media account hackings, it can happen from simple things like this. Someone's got somewhat of a good password, but they've got the same password for everything. One of the accounts that they used 10 years ago had a data breach, and they've not changed the password since. Criminals got access to the account, and because of the same password for everything, they've got access to all their accounts. So sometimes it's those really silly little things that get people. Now, the fun part, examples of phishing. So, this is the most important thing about this presentation, how to identify phishing emails. First up, if it's going to be a general phishing email, they're going to try and emulate a trusted source, usually. So whether it's NHS, the HMRC, whatever it may be, usually the logo will seem a little bit fuzzy, there'll be quite poor resolution, because usually they snap it off the internet, it'll seem quite fuzzy. Next up, it'll be very general. There is a general phishing attack, they're going to say, dear sir or madam, because they're going to know nothing about you, they're going to keep it vague and general. First up as well, ask yourself, was I expecting this email? If you weren't expecting an email when it comes to you, be doubly cautious about it. Now, first, you'll often see some English language errors there as well. So as we mentioned, a lot of the threat actors are based abroad. English isn't their first language, so you might see some spelling mistakes, some grammar mistakes. The sentence structure may look a little bit off, there'll be some typos maybe. But ultimately, most of these kind of phishing attacks, they're trying to invoke a sense of urgency or scarcity. So whether that's requesting you somehow, they might say, unless you click on this link, something really bad is going to happen, or you've got to act fast. A lot of the ticket concert frauds that go around, they act on a sense of scarcity, so they'll say, we've got last-minute Taylor Swift concert tickets, please click here to claim them at a massive discounted price, offer will only last the next day or so. There'll be some kind of sense to try and make you emotional. So ask yourself, whenever you receive an email, is this email trying to make me emotional? Are they trying to make me think rashly? Are they trying to make me to make an impulsive decision? Next up, I want you to always expand the email address which is sending you the email. So don't click on any links. Always our guidance, by the way, is to never ever click on links if you can avoid it. So for example, if you know you're sure that it is the NHS which is emailing you and they're sending you a link, it's always better just to log into the NHS on your browser and then find the page that you need to go to. Avoid links where possible. But ultimately, expand the email address which is sending you the email. So hover over it with your mouse or cursor, whatever it may be, and it will expand who's actually emailing you. So if they claim to be from the NHS that says NH5209X or something, .com.uk, you know that's not the NHS. So it's a really good way of identifying whether or not it's official email. And also, if they're sending you some kind of link that you can see down the bottom right, hover over that link with your mouse. If they claim the NHS, they direct you to an NHS website, you can see where that link is sending you. So if you hover over it with your mouse, it'll give you a preview of where that link is directing you. So if it's not the NHS website, you know to stay well away from it, right? And then we'll talk about how to identify an NHS website later on as well. And also, it's really important you report phishing emails to your email browser. So whether you're using a Gmail account, Outlook, whatever it may be, these platforms will learn from what you're marking as spam. And if you're marking these emails as consistently spam, it will learn from that and it will filter out more of them, so less of them will come to you in the future. So don't just ignore them and delete them. Make sure you're marking them as spam. Forward them onto the reporting address, which I talked about earlier, and you can always block the sender as well. Now, other examples here, kind of more corporate examples. So employees get this one all the time. They'll say your inbox is 99.4% full, reduce your capacity now. Now again, I mentioned about English grammar. Reduce your capacity doesn't make sense, right? So sometimes the little things can detect can be the key for identifying phishing. Now again, if you hover over that link, I can guarantee you it's not going to direct you to www.microsoft.com. It's going to direct you to somewhere else. So password on the example on the right there, so again, it's saying your password is about to expire. This one's very common with employees and in corporate businesses. But again, if you look at the email address which is sending that, that's clearly not from Microsoft, is it? Other example I talked about here because of the time, the WhatsApp scam is really common. So even if you receive an email or a message from your friend's account and you know it is their account, don't assume it is actually your friend that's messaging you. Because people have their accounts compromised all the time. What people do with them does vary. Sometimes they use that account to springboard onto other accounts by sending malicious links. Sometimes they try and farm advertisement revenue from Google Ads. With Instagram accounts, I see a lot of the accounts being used for romance fraud. What criminals will do with these accounts always varies. But one of the things they may do is something like this. They'll message all your friends and contacts. The gags is your Facebook account, your WhatsApp account. They'll message all your friends and family and say, "I've got this free gift card. Please click on this link." So always feel empowered to verify. If you see something that doesn't look quite right, or your friend is messaging you saying, "Can I borrow £200? I'll pay you back the next day," always verify this. Call up your friend on a trusted line and say, "Hi Dave, did you send me this message?" And Dave is going to say, "No, I lost access to my account yesterday." So always feel empowered to verify. If you get an email that claims to be from the HMRC, call them up. "Did you send me this communication?" That's all you need to do. The key message here is just to be very skeptical of the kind of messages that you receive. Now, these ones more kind of business ones here. This one's somewhat ironic on the left here. It's a cybersecurity alert, which in and of itself is a cybersecurity threat. Basically, it's saying you're about to be hacked unless you click on this link. The second you do click on that link, something bad will happen. One on the right there, again, now is playing on people's curiosity, right? Because they're going to think, "Oh, look, I've got another message on Skype. I've got to click it and see what's happening." Because people will think, my boss is going to be angry at me when I read the message that he sent me. That's how these people are trying to operate. They're trying to make you emotional. Yeah, sure. So browsing the internet safely. So it's really important that you look out for what's called a digital padlock. So if you've gone to any website, look at the URL at the top and look out for HTTPS. That S stands for secure. If you're going to a website and it claims to be the NHS and you don't see that S, it's not the NHS. So be very mindful of the kind of websites you're visiting. Always look out for a digital padlock. We always recommend that people use a credit card or a PayPal or Revolut, something other than a debit card for your online payments. And always make sure you're using some of the antivirus products as well. But ultimately, the key takeaway from today, I want you to never trust and always verify. Just be more skeptical. As I said, none of this is technical information. It's all just about that human mentality that you've got to verify things before you assume trust. We won't talk about cryptocurrency. All I say is it's a snake bit. AI. I'm doing a webinar on AI on 15th of April. I won't talk about these too much in the interest of time. Yeah, just I've got to close up here, but basically, I will talk to literally anyone. So, if you have a community group, if you have a small business, what do you think would benefit from free cybersecurity training, please get in touch with me. My email address is there. I will provide free training to any organisation, completely free of charge. Cybersecurity firms hate me. It costs a fortune in the private sector. This is a free public service that the police provide. It's an absolutely brilliant offer. I did over 100 events last year. We're on pace to double that this year. We're really, really busy in the kind of work that we do. We've also launched our new webinar series. Tim's run for a couple of them. And these are basically themed talks, kind of like what I've done today. I've got a gentle learning version, which is a bit slower paced because I talk obnoxiously quickly, I know I do. I've got one which is a bit faster. I've got one for businesses. Interestingly, we've got one on AI as well, so artificial intelligence. This is a massively emerging threat. It's going to massively change the world, it already has. And as a police force, I always like to think we should be living 2 years in the future and being ahead of the curve, because AI is going to be a massive, massive thing that police forces need to deal with in the future. And to my knowledge, the first force will be offering something like this as well. And later in the year, we're also going to be offering something called online safety for women and girls. So that's going to be things like online stalking, how to stop the malicious access and tracking you, all that kind of stuff as well. But anyway, that's what I have for you guys today. I don't take any questions.